Hello, everyone. Today is March the 3rd, 2025. This is Wes Fryer with another dangerous dispatch. And I am having a little trouble with my monitor situation today, so I'm going to have to apologize in advance for not perfect audio or video there. But if you'd like to support my work, you can go to patreon.com/Wes Fryer, and I'll be including in this dispatch some other ways that you can connect. Here's what I'd like to talk about this time. I'm going to talk about some rather serious topics, and I want to start with some levity and some humor, not because things that are going on are funny, but because I've always found that when times are difficult, it pays to keep your sense of humor, because sometimes when stuff's really tough, you could cry or you could laugh, and laughing is usually better. Sometimes you need to cry. But anyway, I want to share some Yellowstone bear humor that relates to what's happening with some of our park rangers and federal employees in a source that you might want to follow to keep your levity in these challenging times. A movie recommendation that I've added that I just learned about from a friend of mine today called Sing Sing. And then I'm going to get into some pretty serious stuff, mentioning one tweet and one post on Truth Social that have to do with the possible withdrawal of the United States from the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, from NATO, as well as the banning of all educational protests by our president. I'm going to mention a webinar that I just was able to facilitate recently for the Media Education Lab on participatory storytelling. And that webinar, which is archived, as well as the links which were shared in that session, I think can really maybe help us a little bit better understand what is happening and therefore what we can do. And that's the fifth thing that I'm going to share tonight, is a new website that I've been thinking about, and I actually spent a few hours tonight creating it, and it is called The Work. So I feel like I need to start with a disclaimer and also let you know how to find a little bit more about me. I'm not sure where you are in space and time as you're watching this video. I want to emphasize that this video and what I'm going to share represent my opinions only, not those of my employer. I am doing this in the evening at my house, on my own computer, on my own time. And it certainly is important for us to check out sources and find out who it is that we're listening to and whether or not we think they should be a trusted source, which is something I'll talk more about. And you can find me at wesfryer.com. My bio is wesfryer.com/bio, and you can read more about me and my background. And you can also, in the instance, and I'm not going to talk a lot about faith and theology here, but I have a website on wesfryer.com/theology that you can learn a little bit about sort of where I'm coming from in my Presbyterian history. I am an Eagle Scout. I'm a middle school teacher. I'm a veteran. I'm an Air Force Academy graduate. I'm a lot of things. I'm a dad. I'm a husband. But I'm also a citizen, and I really care about our nation, and I care about the values of our nation. And that is the reason why I started the Patreon that I did, Dangerous Ideas with Wes Fryer, back in, I think it was maybe November, or maybe it was October at the end anyway. It was before the election. So it must have been in September or October of 2024. And I've decided at this point to go ahead and just publicly share these dangerous dispatches. So here is the first link, which is a little bit of humor. And the headline here, and I think I saw this. Oh, yeah, I have the source. I have a friend, a contact on Mastodon, which is a federated and open source alternative to Twitter and other kinds of micro blogging platforms, shared this. And so the headline is Doge staffer attempting to fire park ranger is mauled by angry bear. So we'll go here to the link. And this is a Substack that is called the Borowitz Report. And this is really short. Think the Onion, okay, as far as humor. Yellowstone National Park, a staffer from Elon Musk's Department of Government Efficiency, Doge, was unable to fire a park ranger on Thursday after being attacked by an angry bear. The ranger's failure to respond to Musk's email demanding a summary of his previous week's achievements prompted the Doge's member-in-person visit to Yellowstone, which resulted in his mauling by the 600-pound grizzly. Quote, the minute the Doge dude tried to fire me, the bear came out of nowhere and basically tore his face off, the park ranger said. It's nice to know that someone appreciates the job I'm doing. According to witnesses, the bear was last seen heading for a nearby Republican town hall. Okay, so just like The Onion, which has a lot of humor, this is called the Borowitz Report. I'm not super familiar with this. It is good to read the about page here. And he identifies himself as Andy Borowitz, a writer and comedian living in New Hampshire with his wife, daughter, dog, who is a golden doodle named Cookie. And he gives some more information. But anyway, if you want to maintain a little bit of levity amidst all of the craziness that is going on, you might want to check out the Borowitz Report. And I do have links. I'll put a link to the slideshow that I'm using for this. And I learned about this from Amy Edge, who I follow on Mastodon, which incidentally, if you're not using some alternative social media platforms to the big ones, and I'm thinking about Twitter X, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, those, I really encourage you to do that. Mastodon does not have the user base that some of these others do. I'm actually enjoying Blue Sky the most, but Mastodon's great. I've invested some time in it, and I appreciate Amy for sharing that post today. The second thing is also on a very positive note, and it's a movie, and it is called Sing Sing from 2023. I have a link here to the trailer that you can go to. Oops, let's not go there yet. I guess those links got broken. I put a link to this on a website called Heal Our Culture. And I started this last year as well, because I believe that we need to act as culture healers, not culture warriors today. And so I've got the trailer to the movie. Here is the synopsis. Divine G, who is Coleman Domingo, imprisoned at Sing Sing prison for a crime he didn't commit, finds purpose by acting in a theater group with other incarcerated men. When a wary outsider joins the group, the men decide to stage their first original comedy in this stirring true story of resilience, humanity, and the transformative power of art, starring an unforgettable ensemble cast of formerly incarcerated actors. And so I give the link to the IMDb page where you can find out more about it, about the actors and actresses in it. And I want to give thanks to my friend David Harris, who shared this and recommended this film. And David is the author of a fantastic podcast that I also recommend to you called The Teachers Forum. And in particular, I haven't actually listened to his latest episode that was released yesterday, but his episode from February 17th is absolutely fantastic. It's Dr. Charles Brantham on Black history, brilliance, resistance, and agency. And one of the takeaways that I have from that podcast is that the playbook of resistance has been written before. And when it comes to the ways in which we need to respond to what I consider to be fascism, and specifically, as I'll talk about later in this video, techno-fascism, we need to listen and learn from especially our African American brothers and sisters who have been fighting for centuries for freedom, for justice, for human rights, for equal treatment, and that struggle continues today. And it's not just a struggle of one particular group. The struggle for anti-racism does continue, but the struggle is wider. And anyway, that's just a great podcast that I would recommend to you. Okay, let's talk about some stuff that's a little more on the negative side. It is crazy, crazy, crazy. And I think maybe I'll switch over to my view here to try and get our heads around what's happening right now. What appears to be happening right now under the presidency of Donald Trump, and it seems that he may pretty much be allowing Elon Musk to act as our president. Of course, Elon was born in South Africa and couldn't legally be elected president, but he appears to be doing just about anything that he wants with the government, including many things that are illegal, and no one really seems to be stopping him. But with the support of Donald Trump, among many, many other things, it appears that the United States is on the edge of withdrawing from NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. And the tweet that I had put up here, and I guess I'll go ahead and share that again, from this past Saturday on March 1st, that Elon shared on Twitter, which I don't use Twitter that much, but I'm still maintaining my account. And this is one reason, because sometimes I want to go check a source. And so Elon said, I agree to Gunther Eagleman's post, it's time to leave NATO and the United Nations. I have not actually watched the press conference that took place between Ukrainian President Zelensky and President Donald Trump and Vice President J.D. Vance. But one of my friends who had watched it, I've just read headlines about it, said, think of the worst video conference or the worst press conference you can imagine. And this is 10 times worse. And so why it is, well, and then, okay, here's protest is another thing. I'll share this. This was a Truth Social post that President Trump shared, or someone using his account shared today on March the 4th, this morning at 7:30 in the morning. And I've got the links to these if you want to go to these originals. This is what the post said on Truth Social, which of course is Donald Trump's social network. Quote, all federal funding will stop for any college, school, or university that allows illegal protests. Agitators will be imprisoned or permanently sent back to the country from which they came. American students will be permanently expelled or, depending on the crime, arrested. No masks, in all caps. Thank you for your attention to this matter. And so this is so surreal, because the right to protest is enshrined in our Constitution, in the Bill of Rights, and in the freedom of speech, and the ways that we have limits on the ways that government can limit speech. Under the United States Constitution, as interpreted by the Supreme Court and the justices of our land for the almost 250 years the United States has been in existence, the right to protest has been really important. It was very important during the Civil Rights Movement. A chief executive of the United States or his appointed designee, but in this case, this was a Truth Social post by President Trump. The chief executive doesn't have the right to ban all protests in the country. And it is really surreal to see those kinds of messages coming from the president. But it's also crazy to read that the Secretary of Defense, Hegseth, this past Friday, ordered the United States Pentagon to stand down all of its planning for both defensive and offensive cyber operations against Russia, to see that we are in the process, we, the United States, of completely withdrawing our support of the Ukraine, and that the de facto president of the United States, who unfortunately appears to be Elon Musk at this point, acting in the shadow of Donald Trump, has stated that he thinks we should leave the United Nations and we should leave NATO. Now, as someone who served in our military in the United States Air Force, as somebody who has a lot of friends and classmates who are veterans, my father served for 21 years in the Air Force as a Vietnam veteran. We've got other family members that are serving and have served. It is just crazy, absolutely crazy, to think about the international order that we have had in the world since 1945, founded on this idea of the rule of law and state sovereignty, the idea that nation states do not have the right to go ahead and just take land and take property. You know, we've got President Trump saying things now like we should take Panama back, we should go ahead and take over Greenland, we should annex Canada as the 51st state. It's just absolutely crazy. And folks, why I am talking about this right now with you and sharing this, I am trying to get my head around what it all means, but like, this is not a drill and it's not a joke. I was listening today to a wonderful podcast by, it's on the podcast Angry Planet. It used to be called War College. Now it's Angry Planet. And I'll show you where I have a link to that if you want to check out the podcast. And the author that they were interviewing, and the journalist, was saying we've really got to pay attention when Elon Musk or Donald Trump or different of these techno bro leaders are joking, because as I think it's Lakoff has talked about, these are trial balloons in many cases with memes that they're floating ideas to see how people respond. But there's very strategic, serious thinking around these kinds of topics and these issues and these plans. So it's really, really crazy. But and I really hope that we are going to have some checks and balances against executive power. As we probably all know from our civics class when we were in high school, we have three branches of government, and those branches are supposed to provide checks and balances on each other. It appears at this point that the United States Congress and if our elected officials there are unwilling and unable to cooperatively or collaboratively serve as a check against executive power. And it doesn't seem like the courts, it's uncertain at this point whether our courts are going to be able to be an effective check. What is likely to happen is we are going to need to have mass protest. And as you can see from that Truth Social post by our president today, he wants to make protests illegal and basically intimidate anyone. For instance, folks on college campuses who tend to be pretty active when it comes to speaking out about different issues and being willing to protest, basically trying to stifle and stop all of those kinds of protests. We are in a very dark era of our nation. And it is going to look different for all of us in terms of what we're going to decide to do. But I am absolutely convinced that silence and passivity is not an option that we should take. We're all at different stages and ages and situations in our lives. And so we're all going to have to decide what to do. But I believe we want to know what this menu of resistance is. What are my choices? Lots of folks are contacting their elected representatives, and I think that's great. But we've got to do more than that, because if we're going to wait for the United States Congress to save us, I don't think we're going to be saved. I think ultimately what we're going to have to do is educate ourselves, build community, and figure out how we are going to resist through multiple means. But one of those is going to involve mass protest, and that is going to be controversial and is likely to be dangerous. And I wish things were different, but this is where we are. So let me go ahead and share with you these last two resources, and then I will close. So if I can get my presentation here. Oh, sorry. Again, normally I'm using two screens, and I don't have to show my little flipping back and forth between my screen. Participatory storytelling. I have the fortunate opportunity now on a monthly basis to facilitate a webinar for the Media Education Lab. And the Media Education Lab has a club, the Media Ed Club, that meets on Mondays via Zoom over my lunch. I have lunch from 12 to 1, and that's when the club meets. And so this past Monday, I facilitated our workshop, and I've got the link to it. And it was on participatory storytelling and the news. And what we mainly looked at, and we have both required and optional media, was this podcast that was on a fantastic channel called the Tech Policy Press. And Tech Policy Press interviewed Kate Starbird. Kate Starbird is a researcher who has researched online disinformation, misinformation, and let's see. Also, I guess I actually have a link to the slides that we used here. I've got a picture of her, and she just won a faculty award at the University of Washington. And this was, I guess, now 6 days ago. She just shared this video presentation called "A Spotlight." Excuse me, a spotlight on rumors. But the video that or the audio podcast we were talking about from Tech Policy Press, just really is insightful. In fact, why don't I go ahead and do this? I'll just share real briefly, because I did this in the webinar. You can check out the full webinar, but as I summarize these points, participatory storytelling is something that those on the right, and including those on the extreme far right in the United States, have been doing for quite a while. They're not worried about fact checking. They're worried about telling stories that fit into the narrative and the worldview that they buy into and that they believe. And so Starbird contends that they have been more effective doing this. And she also points out you can't win a competition with only defense. You have to be on offense as well. And the left, the Democratic Party, those that are not in favor of the actions of President Trump and Elon Musk, Project 2025, really need to get their stuff together, because there has not been an effective offense utilizing social media tools. And one of the things that they point out is that the social media tools, like the microblogging platforms we have, Twitter, but also Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, all of these tools are really being effectively utilized. In fact, some would say just hijacked and dominated by the right, and specifically Donald Trump. I've heard, and I think we heard this on this War College podcast that I'll reference here in a second, that sometimes people on the left and other progressives, want to think about Donald Trump or Elon Musk as not being smart, as not being effective. These folks are very savvy and they are very effective in what they're doing, and they're in control right now of a lot of power. They're not in control of the world, but they have some super big reins, so to speak, to direct the government of the United States, the military of the United States, and all kinds of resources for the United States. Starboard says we need a long-term focus, which I agree with 100%. And she says we need to focus more on building new communication structures rather than just fixing old ones. So this is an excellent podcast. I would commend it to you. And I would also, commend to you this webinar series. And this is an opportunity that I have on a monthly basis to get together primarily with other media literacy educators, but not necessarily all educators. We've got a variety of folks who care about media literacy, and that is really, really important. And I value that opportunity. And so I recommend that you check that out. The last thing I'd like to talk about is this. This is a website that I've started, and it's called The Work. Resisting Techno-Fascism. Let me go ahead and show it to you. So the website is a subdomain of my website, wesfryer.com. You can go to thework.wesfryer.com, and all the links that I have talked about, and I'm talking about in this Dangerous Dispatch, are available in the slideshow. I will link that in the YouTube, and then eventually, probably not tonight, but later, another night, I will go ahead and have those individual links that I'll put in here too. So basically, I have 4 pages on the site now. What is the work? The work we need to do to oppose techno-fascism. Well, what is techno-fascism? Well, I've got a page about this, and here's how I'm defining it. Techno-fascism is an authoritarian system where technological elites, often engineers and corporate leaders, consolidate power by merging state authority with industrial and technological infrastructure. It emphasizes efficiency, surveillance, and control through digital means, undermining democratic norms while advancing corporate and governmental agendas. The term describes a shift where technological innovation becomes a tool for centralized governance, often bypassing traditional democratic processes and public accountability. Now, that definition I actually created with ChatGPT. You can go to the conversation archive that I have there at the link. But there is an article, and here's a non-paywall version, from the New Yorker that just came out on February 26th, and it's called Techno-Fascism Comes to America, the historic parallels that help explain Elon Musk's rampage on the federal government. And I would commend this to you. And on my What is Techno-Fascism page on the work.wesfryer.com, you will find currently 5 different links to some resources that I think can really help us better understand what is going on. In order to respond and decide, what are we going to do? Are we going to resist? What are we going to resist? What's the agenda? What are we going to try to accomplish? We really need to understand the environment that we find ourselves in. And so I think these articles can help. Now, I learned about this from an Angry Planet podcast. And so this is a podcast that came out called Welcome to the Nerd Reich. Interesting. Huh. And so in this post, and this says we're living in the bizarre age of techno-fascism. This is for paid subscribers. Wow. I am a subscriber in Pocket Casts to this podcast. And so I've got a link that you can follow. This is 1 hour and 8 minutes. I actually listened to this today. It's called Welcome to the Nerd Reich. Okay. Nerd Reich. And so this is an interview with journalist and former Angry Planet guest Robert Evans. And he, let's see, am I saying this right? No. Okay. let me go ahead and just read this description. This is one of the best podcasts that I have ever heard to try to help us understand what's going on. We're living in a bizarre age of techno-fascism. The richest man who has ever lived, a man who dreams of colonizing Mars with his children, is America's CEO. Donald Trump, the man people voted for, is just the chairman of the board. What does Elon Musk believe? Is there a playbook for Doge? How bad are things going to get? On this episode of Angry Planet, journalist Gil Duran, that's who is the panelist here, author of the Nerd Reich newsletter, walks us through what's coming. Over on the Shatter Zone, journalist and former Angry Planet guest Robert Evans has published a document that Democratic think tanks are passing around. It gives extra context to Duran's reporting. All the major players and themes we talk about in this episode are there. Curtis Yarvin, Nick Land, and the butterfly effect. And these may be things you haven't heard of before. I haven't heard of these before. I know about Peter Thiel. I know that Peter Thiel helped put J.D. Vance in place. I know Peter Thiel was one of the partners of Elon Musk when they founded PayPal. And if you have not watched some of the really kind of Looney Tune, crazy town, speeches and presentations that Peter Thiel has given about end times and Armageddon and God and Jesus, like, it's wild. But this is a person who has incredible power today, and the playbook that Elon Musk is following right now, along with Doge and others, has been written before, and this is what is referenced in this podcast. So it says, if you want to understand why so many federal workers are getting fired and the Silicon Valley ideology that's infected DC, then give us a listen. And there's more, and there's a lot of links that are here. So I really do recommend that. The last Dangerous Dispatch that I shared, I mentioned this article by Ann Applebaum in The Atlantic. There's a term for what Trump and Musk are doing. It's called regime change, how regime change happens in America. It's a wholesale firing, right, of basically everyone. They want to replace everybody who's in civil service or military leadership with loyalists who are just going to do what they are told. This is the link to Gil Duran's newsletter, and it is called the Nerd Reich, thenerdreich.com. And he's been writing this for a while. He describes it as Silicon Valley tech billionaire politics. And then the last one is also one that I mentioned in my last dispatch, and it's a foreign affairs article, and it's called The Path to American Authoritarianism, What Comes After Democratic Breakdown. Okay, so let me just show a couple more resources, and then I'll close. So that is techno-fascism. That's the definition of it. Those are resources that can help us better understand what it is, what is going on, and what's coming, because this playbook isn't hidden. These aren't secret classified files. These are things that are out there. The authors that, Peter Thiel and Musk and others are following this playbook for appear to be. I mean, they wrote directly what is happening, like all the appointment of a quote CEO to handle the government like a business and to wholesale fire everybody from the old regime so that the new leadership will have people that will do their bidding. This is what's happening right now in government. So the work that we need to do, and I'm not going to pretend to know all these answers, but this is what I think at this point, involves wellness, education, community building, resisting, and protecting. Okay, protecting our privacy, protecting that of our family's privacy. And I write that we are, just right now in very formative stages of resistance. We've got some things that, protests in some parks. We've got some, don't patronize big, Starbucks, Amazon, big stores. I think that just happened this last Friday. But we have yet to have national leaders step forward. I mean, we have Bernie Sanders on a tour, and we've got different people speaking, but in terms of clear leaders for this resistance movement and how it's going to be directed, we don't really have that yet. But the playbook of resistance has been created and followed. Mass protest is our best hope. One of the things that I really hope is that our military is going to continue to stay neutral and will not be involved. I will tell in a later dispatch about my own experiences in Egypt when I went there about 5 years ago and heard some firsthand stories of the 2013 coup d'etat. But that's when the Muslim Brotherhood was elected to leadership in Egypt, and the military stepped in and they had a coup d'etat. And I really, really don't want that to happen. That would really be bad in the United States. And what that means is, I think the burden is going to fall upon us as citizens to engage in mass protest and coordinated mass protest to oppose this move to techno-fascism. We can learn from the past experiences of millions of people. There have been millions of protests. This is the Carnegie Endowment's Global Protest Tracker. And, many of these protests have been effective. Some have not. And there can be a cost, obviously, to those protests. So in addition to those pages, I have a page called Trusted Voices. One of the things that is hard today is we're in such a polluted and fractured and confusing information environment. And so I don't think it's helpful to give people like 100 links. But what I did put on here back in 2016, actually, I gave my second TEDx talk, and it was up in Enid, Oklahoma. And my topic was called Digital Citizenship in the Surveillance State. And I think in that TEDx talk, I was really more identifying a lot of the surveillance issues that were happening. And I didn't have as clear a call to action for privacy, but that really is so important today that we take proactive steps to protect our privacy and to advocate for privacy. So what I've done is given 3 different recommendations for newsletters, 3 recommendations for podcasts, and 3 recommendations for books. And so you can go ahead and check those out. I also have a link to a Notion database that my friend Lucy Gray has started. There's a group called Thrive EDU or Thrive 2025. And so she has created this resource that is a gallery and list of different articles and resources that can be used. And so we're going to build that in the time to come. And the last thing I've got is some ways to subscribe. Patreon. I'm updating my media literacy Substack. I also maintain a website called Heal Our Culture, which is related to this. And this relates to my Conspiracies and Culture Wars project that I've been doing since 2019. So I need to close. I want to close every time with hope, because I think that it is very easy for us to feel isolated and alone, for us to feel overwhelmed and to feel frozen, and to feel like the things that we do won't matter because they're just so big. And what could we do? And I am here to tell you, ladies and gentlemen, that every single day, the actions that we take, the words that we say, they make a difference. And so in small ways or in big ways, in whatever ways we can, we need to do the work together. We need to take care of ourselves, first of all, okay? And this is challenging for me. I mentioned my fast in my last update. I'm not looking at the news when I get up in the morning every day like I have forever. It's just been too overwhelming for me. I am taking a more intentional take on the news. I am reading more Substack newsletters for the opinions and the filtering that other people are doing of the news. I mean, I'm personally starting every day with Bible scripture and a meditation and with quiet time. I've done that for quite a while. But wellness, health, we've got to take care of ourselves, and we've got to be careful not to be overwhelmed. But we also have to be educated. There's more stuff, right? You can go to thework.wesfryer.com and you can read these other things. But what we're doing right now, what you're doing, watching this video and seeking news sources and trusted voices, what the heck is going on? And where is this going to go? Is it going to get worse? And what are we going to do? We can figure this out together, and we can overcome. We shall overcome, because the folks that are attempting to continually scapegoat different groups, blame immigrants, um, you know, foment it's for a purpose, right? It is for a purpose. There's a lot of money that's being made, and the control of government and, you know, the proposed, trillions of dollars of additional tax cuts, there's a lot of people that stand to gain a lot financially, but there's a lot of good news. We have great tools to organize and to be connected. And the fact that you're even watching this video that I'm recording, I know it looks like I'm at Blowing Rock, North Carolina, but this is just a virtual background. I'm in my office at my house, and it's, 10:46 p.m. on a Tuesday night. The fact that you can even see this is really incredible. And we are going to need to leverage these tools of collaboration and communication to figure out how to resist together. We've got to maintain hope. We need to study the playbook of those who have gone before us. And we've got to stick together. We've got to build community, because there are a lot of us. There are so many more of us than there are of them. And this is our country. This is our world. I believe that we need to be good stewards of it. And we got to collaborate to do that. So please do not lose hope. Keep educating yourself. Be careful about how much of the mainstream of just news and social media that you open up your brain to. But let's find trusted voices and share them. Go to that menu of resistance link that you can find on thework.wesfryer.com and look at other resources that other people are sharing. Share your own resources. Who are you reading? Who are you watching? What are the things that you're doing to stay well in this time? All right. So until next time, stay safe, stay well, and keep the faith. Don't lose hope.